Hello, Sci-Fi audiobook family. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of a team that no one noticed, but whose true value cannot be ignored.
They're telling you they're worthless, that no one wants them, that they're nothing. But what if one human could see what everyone else ignores, and what if that sight changed everything? The market on Vierx 9 had a smell that could only be described as everything simultaneously: burnt machinery, fermented synth fruit, ozone, and the faint but persistent odor of someone's failed attempt at replicating chocolate. Cargo drones buzzed lazily overhead, dodging each other with the kind of grace no human pilot had ever learned, and occasionally dropping packages that would either bounce harmlessly or explode into sparks, depending on the mood of gravity that day. Merchants shouted, traders bargained, and somewhere in the middle of the chaos, a human walked, hands stuffed into his coat pockets, smiling as if he understood a secret joke that nobody else did. "They're worth nothing, take them if you want," a trader said with the kind of shrug that implied he had just discarded a star, or perhaps a life form of negligible consequence, but in either case it was none of his problem. The human raised an eyebrow, glanced in the direction the trader had pointed, and blinked. He had expected scrap metal, broken bots, or maybe a crate of expired nutrient packs. Instead, he saw them. A cluster of beings pressed together like they were all hiding from disappointment itself, eyes darting, shoulders tensed, and just watching. Among them was a woman, or something close enough to human that calling her that would not be inaccurate. Her skin was pale, almost luminous under the flickering neon lights of the market stalls, and her long silver hair fell over her shoulders in gentle waves that ignored gravity's usual demands. Her ears were longer than any human's, delicate and elegant, curving back slightly as if they had their own agenda, their own language for listening. She didn't look frightened. She looked like someone who had been waiting to be ignored all her life and had accepted it. The human noticed the faint twitch in her nostrils, the almost imperceptible raising of her chin, and smiled softly. The trader, a tall thing with too many arms and the smell of burnt lubricant lingering around his cuffs, gestured toward the group. "Defectives, outdated skills, don't integrate, don't sell, don't even try to be useful. Take them or leave them, it won't matter." One of the beings, a spindly fellow with a habit of mumbling numbers to himself, stirred nervously. "At least we don't explode," he whispered. The alien woman shot him a look that could have melted metal. "Try not to embarrass us further," she said in a voice that carried the weight of someone who had learned sarcasm before kindergarten. The human's smile widened. "If they're worthless," he said slowly, almost thoughtfully, "then you won't mind if I take them." The trader laughed, sharp and too loud, and waved his many hands as if to shoo a cloud away. "Fine, take them, I don't care. Good riddance." The human gestured gently, and the group moved, uncertainly at first, like seedlings emerging from a concrete crack. The journey from the market to the human's ship was quieter than the market itself, which was not necessarily a compliment. It just meant that the group had learned that silence could be a shield. One of them finally broke it. "Is this a rescue mission or a creative form of kidnapping?" he asked, voice tight with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The human laughed, a sound too warm for a place like Vierx 9. "I haven't decided yet," he said. The alien woman with long ears turned her head slightly, regarding him carefully. There was no fear there, only the faintest spark of interest, like a sensor flicking on in her mind. The ship was modest, more functional than elegant, with narrow corridors lined with panels that hummed and flickered, displaying data in languages that most humans wouldn't recognize without a week of study. The smell was faintly of ozone and soldering flux, with a hint of recycled air that carried stories from hundreds of journeys. The human assigned tasks based not on what they had been called worthless for, but on what he imagined they might do if given the chance. The results were chaotic, sometimes hilarious. One being tried to recalibrate the navigation system and almost sent the ship into a restricted military zone, prompting the human to sigh and mutter, "Bold but unnecessary initiative. Someone get coffee." Laughter bubbled up, reluctant at first, then freer, as the crew began to realize mistakes were not punishable. They were fuel for problem-solving and sometimes entertainment. Even the alien woman, who had learned the art of restraint over countless disappointments, allowed herself a small, secretive smile, when a small maintenance drone spun wildly out of control, and she guided it with a hand gesture that seemed effortless. It was not magic exactly, but it was close enough to make the human clap once, softly. "Nicely done," he said. She only tilted her head and returned to her work, hiding the smallest satisfaction in the fold of her long ears. Days passed, and the overlooked began to reveal layers no one had noticed before. The muttering mathematician, once dismissed as slow and scatterbrained, now mapped complex probability patterns that could predict equipment failures before they happened. Another, thought to be too clumsy, demonstrated an almost artistic precision in repairing microcircuitry, welding together tiny pieces as if composing a symphony in solder. The alien woman listened, not just to voices, but to machinery, to airflow, to the subtle vibrations of energy in the ship's core. She could sense a failing capacitor before it even glitched, hear hidden interference in transmissions, detect anomalies that no human eye or standard scanner could perceive. The human watched quietly, never boasting, never praising too loudly. He treated each small victory as if it were simply the natural outcome of what he had expected. "You act like we're not surprising you," one of the new crew members said one evening, leaning against a panel with a grin. The human shrugged, tossing a data pad into the air and catching it with ease. "You're not," he said. "You're just finally getting the chance to prove me right." Laughter followed, softer, genuine, and filled the cramped corridors with a warmth that felt new, like sunlight in a cave. The market's judgment, the galaxy's dismissal, the casual cruelty of the trader's words, they no longer mattered. What had been called worthless began to shine in subtle, unassuming ways. And in that quiet glow of recognition, the alien woman realized that the human had done something no one else had. He had simply seen them. Not as defects, not as failures, not as commodities, but as beings capable of growth, of humor, of brilliance. And in seeing them, he had changed the course of their lives entirely. The ship hummed, a low, persistent heartbeat, carrying its strange, newly formed crew into the uncharted dark between stars. And somewhere amidst the wires, the blinking lights, the faint smell of ozone, and the laughter that now had room to breathe, the alien woman with the long ears allowed herself the smallest hope. Not the kind that demanded faith or certainty, just the kind that whispered, gently, that perhaps being seen could be the most dangerous and most beautiful thing of all. The human leaned against a doorway, hands crossed, watching them. "I warned you," he said with a grin. "Life aboard my ship includes unexpected explosions, infinite chances to look foolish, and occasional heroic moments. Welcome aboard." The alien woman rolled her eyes just slightly, but for the first time, it felt like a rebellion born of curiosity, not fear. Somewhere deep in the hum of the engines and the flicker of the monitors, the ship seemed to nod in agreement, carrying them into the vast, uncharted possibility of tomorrow. Mistakes happened. Laughter followed. Growth unfolded in tiny, brilliant increments. And for the first time, what had been called nothing, worthless, was not only alive, but alive in color, in song, and in spark. The human's eyes twinkled with humor. The alien woman's ears flicked with quiet amusement. And the rest of the crew, once invisible, began to find the rhythm of their own value in a galaxy that had forgotten them. By the time the first patrol drones passed by the ship and scanned it for registration and threat levels, the crew had already started a debate about whether to prank them with false energy signatures. The human listened, grinning, and said, "If we survive, I want a full report on how many sparks you can create without setting the ship on fire." The alien woman tilted her head, smiled faintly, and whispered, "We'll see." And that, in itself, was more than anyone had expected. The market, the dismissals, the judgments, they existed in another life, another timeline. Here, aboard the humming vessel, laughter, mistakes, and quiet brilliance mingled, weaving the threads of what would become a story far stranger, far richer, and far funnier than anyone could have anticipated. The journey had just begun, and the universe, with all its rules, prejudices, and absurdities, had not yet realized that it was about to be very, very wrong about them. The human, leaning on the rail and watching stars slip past, muttered to no one in particular, if only they knew what they're about to see. The alien woman, long ears flicking, smiled slightly. Somewhere deep in the ship's hum, the others were already planning mischief. And the galaxy, vast and indifferent, hummed along, entirely unaware that the smallest, overlooked sparks could set the night alight. Mistakes, jokes, brilliance, and an occasional burst of chaos awaited them. And for the first time, they were not afraid. The ship drifted between two uncharted moons, the kind of space where sensors beeped politely at emptiness, and navigation officers muttered complaints about the lack of anything worth scanning. Inside, the crew, once discarded, now tolerated, now slowly admired, moved like a nervous symphony. The human leaned against a wall with his usual grin, watching the alien woman with her long ears quietly inspect a panel. She didn't just read data, she conversed with it, murmuring tiny corrections, flicking switches with an elegance that made Sparks look deliberate. When the ship shuddered just slightly, she raised one eyebrow at him. "Are you sure this thing isn't going to explode?" he asked. She smirked. "Technically, yes, but probably not." One of the crew, a wiry being with more limbs than a human could comfortably count, was attempting to recalibrate the life support system while muttering about the humidity levels in a tone usually reserved for weather forecasts. "Humidity at 47.2%, he said. "Deviation from optimal, mildly disappointing." The human blinked. "You're measuring air like it owes you rent?" The being shrugged. "I am thorough," he said. "Air is serious business." The alien woman rolled her eyes and patted the system lightly, which somehow corrected the deviation. The human laughed. "See, even your sarcasm has practical value." Lunch in the common area was an event nobody had warned them about. Replicated food hovered slightly above the trays until sensors confirmed it was safe to eat, which led to discussions about the culinary ethics of simulated meat versus synthesized nutrients. One of the aliens, small, stubby, constantly nervous, tried a bite of what appeared to be a strawberry-flavored protein cube and immediately made a face that suggested either the flavor or his life choices had betrayed him. "It tastes interesting," he said. The human nodded solemnly. "That's the official term," he said. "Accept it. Move on. Life is interesting, too." The alien woman watched him with a faint amusement curling the corners of her lips. "You eat like a philosopher," she said, "except with more yelling at vegetables." Their first test outside standard routes arrived as a warning. Sensors picked up a drifting freighter, black and silent, the kind that made seasoned pilots squint. "Derelict," one of the crew said. "Possibly dangerous, possibly haunted, possibly both." The human grinned. "All the more reason to investigate," he said. They suited up, helmets clicking into place, and the group shuffled toward the airlock, joking about ghosts in zero gravity and betting on who would scream first. The alien woman, calm as ever, adjusted her suit with long fingers, ears twitching slightly. "I'll bet the last one screaming is you," she said. The human laughed, pretending to look insulted. "You wound me," he said, "and yet I accept the challenge." Boarding the freighter, the air smelled faintly of burnt circuits and old coolant. The lights flickered in lazy pulses, giving corridors the appearance of being alive, or at least annoyed. They explored carefully, exchanging jokes to keep nerves from discovering fear. "I vote we pretend this is a haunted cruise ship," one crew member whispered, earning a laugh from the alien woman. "Do ghosts have proper airlocks?" she asked. "Only the polite ones," the human replied. They found the bridge, where a console hummed faintly and displayed erratic data streams. One of the humans shrugged and said, "Looks like the ghost has a computer." The alien woman leaned over it, flicking switches and humming under her breath, and within minutes, the data stabilized. The ship had a memory of its travels, and she was reading it like a diary. Back on their own ship, laughter filled the corridors as they recounted the derelict incident. "So the ghost was just a misaligned gravity stabilizer?" One of them asked. The human nodded. "Exactly," he said, "but a misaligned stabilizer that could have turned your breakfast into a projectile if we weren't careful." The alien woman raised her eyebrows. "And yet you call it exploration." "Exploration is a polite word for chaos management," he said, "and learning who screams first." Weeks passed. The overlooked crew began to operate almost seamlessly, a strange rhythm forming between them. The muttering mathematician, once feared as scatterbrained, was now coordinating the navigation grids with uncanny precision. Another, thought clumsy, was designing modular repairs that could be deployed on any system in moments. And the alien woman? Well, she had a way of seeing the ship differently, as if it were alive and just waiting for someone to understand its quirks. Her long ears twitched at the subtlest anomalies, and she corrected tiny errors before they became problems. The human watched, impressed but pretending he was. Humor became their lubricant. If a misfired repair caused a tiny explosion in the storage bay, they all laughed. If the replicated food produced a flavor that resembled old engine oil, someone joked about it being the chef's special, and laughter followed. The alien woman even participated, smirking at one pun about zero-gravity noodles and adding her own dry comment about how gravity's sense of humor was obviously overdue for an update. The human laughed so hard he almost fell into a storage locker. One night, while the stars slipped past the observation deck, the human and the alien woman found themselves staring quietly out the viewport. "Do you ever think anyone notices us out here?" he asked. She tilted her head, ears flicking. "Not unless they want to," she said. "Most people don't look closely enough. They see a ship, not the crew inside it." He smiled. "I suppose that's why I'm still here," he said. "I look closely." She allowed herself a faint smile, a rare gesture she reserved for those moments she didn't have to hide her curiosity. Their routines were punctuated with smaller adventures. A misrouted cargo delivery that ended with a chase across a drifting asteroid belt, debates about whether to prank a nearby patrol drone with false sensor readings, and endless discussions about the best method to brew coffee in zero gravity without creating a small coffee storm. Each incident reinforced their bond, created jokes, and most importantly, reminded them that being seen and valued could coexist with absurdity. The human continued to assign tasks in a deliberately unpredictable manner. "Whoever fixes the engine today gets to decide the next emergency drill," he said. The crew groaned, knowing this meant chaos, laughter, and possibly minor injuries. The alien woman smirked faintly and said, "I already know which one of you will panic first." She was right, as always, and the human clapped with exaggerated delight. "Bravo, correct predictions and gentle mocking. You're officially part of the leadership team." They found themselves laughing at minor catastrophes, celebrating small victories, and learning to trust each other in ways that had never been possible before. The human would tell jokes about galactic customs, misquoted interstellar laws, and the absurdity of bureaucratic space stations. The alien woman, long ears twitching, would reply with wit so dry it could almost be measured. And in the quiet hum of the ship, with stars slipping past like glittering fish, the once-overlooked crew began to realize they had a voice, a purpose, and even the capacity for mischief. The derelict incident had been just the beginning. Soon, the crew would face real dangers, strange anomalies, and encounters that would test everything they thought they knew about themselves and the universe. But for now, the humor held them together. The laughter, the jokes, the whispered challenges in dim corridors. They were the glue binding their mismatched skills into something coherent. And the human, with his quiet attentiveness and strange faith in their abilities, remained the anchor they had never known they needed. The alien woman, perched near the observation deck, watched her crewmates argue over the proper calibration of the life support humidity system. She shook her head, a smile tugging at her lips. "They are ridiculous," she murmured. The human appeared at her side, leaning against the rail. "Yes," he said, "and they're perfect for this job." She tilted her head, ears flicking, and allowed herself a full laugh this time, because in this tiny, humming ship drifting through an indifferent galaxy, laughter could be revolutionary, and sometimes it was enough to rewrite everything. The crew's mistakes continued to be sources of amusement. One incident involved the misfiring of a propulsion array that catapulted a storage crate through the common area. It bounced once, twice, and landed perfectly upright on the alien woman's workstation. She looked at it, then at the human, and deadpanned, "Well, at least it's punctual." The human clapped once. "Excellence in delivery," he said, grinning. And just like that, another moment of chaos became another moment of bonding, of humor, of quiet recognition that these beings, dismissed by everyone else, were alive, capable, and entirely irrepressible. The ship hummed on, carrying them farther into the unknown, each joke, each small triumph, each carefully avoided explosion, a reminder that the galaxy might never notice them. But they would notice each other. And sometimes, in the drifting vastness of space, that was enough. The stars outside the viewport streaked by like molten glass as the ship coasted toward the edge of the uncharted sector. Inside, the crew had settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. If normal meant a mix of improvised repairs, debates over replicated meals, and the occasional minor explosion that drew laughter rather than panic. The human walked the corridors with his usual easy grin, though now it carried something else. A quiet satisfaction, a sense that the chaos around him had transformed into a living, breathing family. The alien woman with her long ears moved beside him, adjusting a diagnostic panel with effortless precision. She flicked a glance at him, one eyebrow raised. "You've changed," she said softly. "I have," he asked, mock surprise in his tone. She shrugged, ears twitching. "You used to just see the chaos and try to manage it. Now you see us. The crew, the ridiculous, the brilliant, everything. You've learned patience, if that counts for anything." He laughed, a sound that bounced off the bulkheads and drew a few curious looks from the muttering mathematician, who promptly whispered something about the optimal laugh-to-task ratio. "I'll take that as a compliment," he said, glancing at the alien woman. "And I think the crew would too, if they weren't busy plotting the next minor catastrophe." It was a delicate balance, this ship and its crew. They had faced drifting mines that hummed like angry cats, spatial storms that bent instruments in impossible ways, and a rogue fleet of patrol drones convinced the ship was some kind of threat. Each encounter had begun with fear, hesitation, or complaints, sometimes all three, but had ended with triumph, laughter, or ingenious improvisation. The alien woman had become indispensable, not just for her skill in reading the subtle vibrations of the ship, but for the way she reminded everyone that observation and patience were sometimes more powerful than brute force or clever tricks. They had just finished recalibrating the communication array when a signal pinged from deep space. A long-abandoned colony vessel, lost for decades, was broadcasting a distress signal. The crew exchanged glances. Adventure was rarely polite. The human grinned. "Well, it looks like our quiet day is over," he said. The alien woman raised an eyebrow. "Quiet for you, not for the ship," she replied. A stubby crew member muttered, "Adventure, excitement, probable explosions. Yes, very quiet indeed." Boarding the derelict vessel was a performance of skill and humor. Corridors groaned, lights flickered, and holographic safety warnings flickered in tones that were almost apologetic. One crew member tripped over a loose cable and fell, managing to knock several maintenance bots into a frantic dance of avoidance. The human laughed so hard he almost dropped his toolkit. "See," he said, "chaos and comedy, the perfect entry-level training program for our crew." The alien woman, ever composed, simply adjusted a gravity stabilizer and allowed a faint smile. "You find humor in everything," she said. "I suppose it keeps the human part of you sane." Inside the command deck of the colony vessel, they discovered the cause of the distress signal. A failing fusion core, dangerously unstable. The human quickly coordinated the crew. The mathematician calculated probabilities for safe venting, the clumsy genius handled delicate repairs with surprising finesse, and the alien woman monitored the energy flow, ears flicking at imperceptible variances. One by one, their dismissed abilities became essential. Every joke, every moment of quiet observation, every misstep that had once seemed trivial now converged into a precise, synchronized effort. At one point, a minor slip in calculation caused a vent hatch to slam open, sending a crate spinning. The human lunged, catching it with an exaggerated flourish. "Elegance under pressure," he declared. The alien woman shook her head, hiding a grin. "You're ridiculous," she said. "And yes, we're grateful." Laughter rippled through the crew, tension dissolving as they worked. Hours later, the fusion core stabilized, the colony vessel's systems rebooted, and the lights flickered back to life with a steady hum. The crew shared quiet glances, realizing that they had collectively achieved something that once would have been impossible for any one of them alone. The human clapped lightly. "Teamwork," he said. "The ultimate punchline. It works and it's glorious." The alien woman allowed herself a fuller smile now, her long ears brushing lightly against her shoulders. "We work," she said, "and perhaps we are seen." The journey back to their ship was lighter, filled with jokes about who had nearly set off the fusion core, who had almost floated into the void, and which maintenance bots had the best dance moves. Each member of the crew had grown in confidence, skill, and camaraderie. The human noticed subtle changes in himself too, patience that had once been fleeting, humor that had deepened, and understanding that leadership was not about orders but recognition, trust, and the ability to see hidden potential. Back aboard their own ship, the alien woman observed the crew bustling with newfound energy, assigning tasks, recalibrating minor systems, and laughing freely at mistakes. She leaned against a console, ears flicking, and realized that what the human had offered them was more than employment, more than survival. He had given them belief, and belief was contagious. "You've done more than fix systems," she said. "You've built something here." He shrugged, modest but proud. "I just saw what everyone else ignored," he said. "Turns out seeing is half the battle. The rest, well, that's all you." Weeks later, they approached a bustling trade station, one that had once turned away the same group as worthless. Now, the crew moved with quiet confidence, repairing equipment, analyzing data, and laughing together in a rhythm that no one could disrupt. The human guided them past customs, with a grin, joking about how he hoped the inspectors enjoyed the unexpected symphony of chaotic competence that followed him wherever he went. The alien woman flicked her ears at a monitor, checking systems, her quiet laughter joining in with the humans. Their exploits began to attract attention, but not the kind that forced them to flee. Other crews, once dismissive, now watched with curiosity and occasionally admiration. Offers came for contracts, missions, and collaborations. The human never boasted. He simply allowed the crew to shine, to demonstrate that the dismissed, the overlooked, the apparently worthless had value that exceeded imagination. Every joke, every mishap, every quiet observation was proof. One evening, as they drifted in orbit around a gas giant with swirling violet storms, the human stood beside the alien woman on the observation deck. "Do you ever think we'll be seen for what we really are?" he asked. She turned, eyes reflecting the storms below, ears flicking thoughtfully. "Perhaps," she said, "but the important part is that we see ourselves, and that is enough for now." He nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. "I think you're right. It always was." The crew continued their journeys, exploring uncharted sectors, solving problems no one else would dare touch, and laughing at the absurdity and beauty of it all. They had become more than a team. They were a family forged in the fires of disregard and strengthened by the warmth of recognition. Each one had grown, skills honed, confidence built, humor sharpened, respect earned. The alien woman with her long ears found joy in observation and action alike. The human discovered patience, wisdom, and a leadership style rooted in seeing the unseen. The others flourished, proving that value was not inherent in appearance or status, but in opportunity, courage, and the courage to be ridiculous when necessary. Their ship hummed through the void, carrying them toward new adventures, but with each journey, they returned to one unchanging truth. Being seen, truly seen, could change everything. And in that light, their laughter, their small victories, and their collective brilliance became the most powerful force in the galaxy. As they floated past the gas giant storms, a minor explosion in the engineering bay sent a shower of sparks raining across the corridor. The human ducked theatrically, raising his hands. "I call that improvised entertainment," he declared. The alien woman laughed, a clear, ringing sound that echoed through the ship. "You are incorrigible," she said, smiling fully now. The crew joined in, laughter mingling with the hum of engines and the whisper of stars outside. And for the first time, the galaxy itself seemed to pause, recognizing the worth that had always existed and was now impossible to ignore. The human's eyes flicked to his crew, each face reflecting a journey from dismissal to triumph. As they floated past the gas giant storms, a minor explosion in the engineering bay sent a shower of sparks raining across the corridor. The human ducked theatrically, raising his hands. "I call that improvised entertainment," he declared. The alien woman laughed, a clear, ringing sound that echoed through the ship. "You are incorrigible," she said, smiling fully now. The crew joined in, laughter mingling with the hum of engines and the whisper of stars outside. And for the first time, the galaxy itself seemed to pause, recognizing the worth that had always existed and was now impossible to ignore. The human's eyes flicked to his crew, each face reflecting a journey from dismissal to triumph, from silence to voice, from uncertainty to skill. He realized that the value he had seen was not only theirs, it had been his as well, forged in patience, humor, and the courage to believe when everyone else ignored. He leaned against the viewport, quiet for a moment, then whispered,